Welcome fathers who are looking to inspire their kids and become fearless. This is the Become a Fearless Father show and I'm your host, Klaas van Oosterhout. I'm a father of 2 boys, husband and entrepreneur. This show is created to teach you how to take control and enjoy the most difficult job you've ever faced, fatherhood. I'm going to keep it real and share real life experience. A heads up, there is no magic pill. You will have to put in the hours, sweat and tears to achieve victory. Are you ready to improve your health, wealth, relationships, knowledge and become the hero your family needs you to be? I know you are. So get your pen and paper ready and let's become fearless fathers together.
So welcome everybody to another live interview show with Become a Fearless Father, and I have the pleasure to be on with Jeremy Todd of the Positive Side podcast. I just went real quick before Jeremy's going to introduce himself. I just want to remind people to have a pen and some paper ready to take notes because there's going to be golden nuggets in this conversation for sure. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on. I love the fact that Brandon introduced us to each other, and let's get started right away, man. I want to know everything about you, so let's start off with your origin story, your background story. Tell us all about you, and we take it from there.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, but first of all, I appreciate you having me on the show, man. I'm really excited about it. And anybody, again, you mentioned Brandon Hanley from Fatherhood from the rest of us, and anybody that's a friend of his is a friend of mine. There's no doubt about that. He's a good buddy of mine, so I really appreciate that. A little bit about me, yeah, man. I mean, I've done a little bit about everything. As you mentioned, I appreciate that. I'm the host of the Positive Side podcast, and it was an opportunity for me to really just give back to people as well. Just really give back the power of positivity and allowing people to get unstuck in life. Now, as you go through life, and everybody goes through it, you feel like you get burned out and stuck. And that's really what I wanted to do, is give people that motivation to look at the positive side of things. No matter how bad it is and how ugly it gets, there's always a positive side to everything. And that's really the whole momentum thing that I've got now. Obviously, I want to mention my kids too, because this is a fatherhood podcast. I'm a father of 3 kids. Kids are awesome. We homeschool the kids too, which is and it's been an amazing journey. And I wouldn't do it any other way. I think the what we've learned in homeschooling through the kids and what they've done at their age is just absolutely amazing. And we've traveled a lot too, which gives us the flexibility. In the last 2 years, I've lived in. I lived in a couple different places in North Carolina. I've lived in California. We've Airbnb'd all across the country, and we can do that through the flexibility of the homeschooling. So big advocates of homeschooling, big advocates of really just letting our kids do what they do. It's fair. We are unschooling parents. I'm not sure if you know anything about unschooling, but we are big unschoolers, untraditional, no schedule. They wake up, we talk to them. Hey, what do you want to do today? Let's get into it. And they're extremely driven. They work well together, very well mannered. And when you meet my kids, you just see a difference between them. And again, hey, not saying anything's wrong with going to traditional schooling. If that's good for you and your family, hey, have at it. But for us, the homeschooling is a great option to go down. So that's what we're really excited about for sure. But I appreciate that, though. Thank you.
Nice, man. That's awesome. Look, man, I have one question at the end. I'm going to put it all the way to the front.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Because you intrigued me right now with saying that you homeschool your kids. I know for Europe, it's something that is not very well known. I know in America, the UK, it's a lot more used. Now, I agree with you, man. I understand where you're coming from when you're saying, we are unschooling our kids. I'm actually a little sad by the school system here. Not just sad, but I've seen my son evolve, and it's awesome. But there's one evolvement that I don't like, and I want to talk to you about it right away to see if that is something that you experience with your kids as well. And that's the following. I find him at the moment very emotional, and he gets the most emotional when he does something and he can't figure out how to do it. He makes a mistake. We tell him he makes a mistake, and then he just starts crying and bawling, and it's just, there's such a perfectionism and such a scaredness of failure that I think that's something that should be taught in school, but I don't think I think the perfectionism is what's being pushed from school, right? So what's your view on that, and how was that experience with your kids?
That's a great question, and I just want to keep prefacing with the way we raise our kids is so different than everybody else. A situation like that with my kids, and the failure is part of life. I mean, you have to learn how to fail. Failure is not falling backwards. You fail forward, right? And anytime you fail something, you've got to learn from the mistakes and do it. But with our kids, we're pretty hardcore. I mean, it's they start crying and complaining about it. We just tell them to suck it up. I'm not going to put up with your crying. I'm not going to put up with your whining. If you want to go ahead and whine and cry, go to your room. I don't want to hear it. I mean, get out of my face. You go handle it and figure it out. And then kids have this unique ability to just figure things out themselves. But what we do as parents, a lot of times, we run in and we want to save the day. We want to coddle them and tell them it's okay. Hey, don't worry about it. It'll be better next time. They just need to figure it out. And that's one thing with homeschooling. When you have a kid that's acting up, that you just go figure your own thing out. Go outside and play. And I want to kind of tie this into, and this is, I don't know if this is even going to be relevant, but I think it is. But one of the big things that we are huge on is social media and technology and TV. Is that we don't let our kids watch any TV. They haven't watched TV in probably, boy oh boy, it's been 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
And social media, same thing. Any kind of video gaming system, iPads, iPhones, PlayStation. We don't let them use any of those. I look back at the time when my daughter had about 4 years ago, I bought them iPads for Christmas, bought all the kids iPads, and it was great, and again, I say this too, I think technology has a spot in it, and I'll talk a little bit about that with my son's business. He's got kind of building through his website and things like that. But when I gave my daughter the iPad at age, she was 6, I think, 5 or 6. And, and I know we can all relate to this. When you give a kid an iPad and you try and take it away from them, they're like, oh, I just need 1 more minute. I need 5 more minutes. I just got to watch this last show. And I got so frustrated with it one day that I literally took the iPad and chucked it out the front door. And I said, you're never playing with this thing ever again. And again, hardcore, but they haven't touched the iPad since then. They haven't touched any video gaming systems at all. We've got our kids conditioned through homeschooling that if you want to go figure something out, you want to go play, you go figure it out. You go outside. I think this technology is good in a degree, but I think it's eating away at our kids' ability to figure out how to develop skills like overcoming obstacles, communication skills. Excuse me. Just finding them something for themselves to do. Be able to figure that out. If you want to go play, just go play. If you want to go build outside and dig in the dirt, go outside and dig in the dirt. But I don't want them to be sitting in front of it, and again, it's just ours. It's not right, wrong, or different. I don't want to say it's right or wrong, but the way we teach our kids is that we shut everything down and then they just have to figure it out. And I'm telling you, the growth of that they've done and the relationship that they've created with themselves, boy, girl, boy, they're best friends. They don't argue. They argue a little bit. It's not as much as they used to, but they step up. They teach each other. They figure their own things out. So for about the first month, we heard Dad on board, and now we never hear it because they just go figure it out. They know when their time is to play, they go play. They don't have to rely on us to give them something or turn something on to figure it out themselves. So that in our life has been gigantic. So you mentioned that situation. I think you said was with your son that you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, a situation like that, it's tough, man. It's tough, and I'm a big advocate of just ripping the Band-Aid off and just being tough parenting, man. Just say, you know what, I'm your parent, not your friend. Go figure it out and quit your crying because I don't want to hear it and no one else wants to hear it. Grow up. And we did that at an early age. 5 years old, tell my kids to grow up. And it put this maturity among them where if they have that big of a meltdown, they know if they're in that bad of a mood, they just go and they're quiet in their own room. And I just go in there, hey, you need time by yourself? I do. All right, cool. Go in there, sit down, and then when you calm down, get your thoughts together, let's come out and have a conversation. And that's worked well for all my kids. My 7-year-old, my 7-year-old, 9-year-old, they all on the same level. They're just, and again, sure there's those times that you got to get involved a little bit more. But that's the biggest thing I would tell you is just really just rip the Band-Aid off and just tell them to go figure it out. That's worked for us, and maybe that'll work for you.
Exactly. I appreciate you sharing that. Well, you mentioned one thing, of course, every parent teaches their kids different, and what's right or what's wrong is always a question of, and I'm an advocate of that. You hear something, somebody shares something, in this case, you, Jeremy, and you try it, you take action right away and you try it for a while and see, hey, what's the response? Does it work for you? Yes or no? And so I really appreciate you sharing that. My boy's 5, and what happened was that he had to do some homework. That's only thing they have to do as homework so far this year is that they get a book. We read the book, and then he has to just write down his name, the name of the characters, and what he thought of the story, and that's it. However, he's in the phase of learning how to write, so he doesn't know all the letters yet. He made a mistake. My wife, she she scribbled it out like that's wrong, and oof.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, you know, my wife did that to me too, because I was like her. I would correct my kids as they would write, and that is discouraging the children. That's what I've learned with my kids. I don't correct anything. I let them go through it, and then they just fill out the answers, and I don't put big X's through it. I'll either say, hey, relook at this one when you get a chance. Relook at this one, and especially with spelling. And spellings is, I think, again, from what I've learned, but spelling is a skill that may not come. Kids spell at different ages, whether it be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That it's something that you don't really. If they're trying, that's what we do. Is just let them spell out. We know what they say, and we think it's funny. Like I'll mention real quick, my son's website will be up and running here soon. He's got this company called Haywood County Seeds, and he's got a catalog that he developed from for himself. But even at 12, he's got misspellings all throughout it. I'm not going to correct him. That's what makes him unique. And also for me, I think it's the insight of how my child's brain's working. Why do they think that, whatever, you pick the letters out, why do they think the word great is Grate, and instead of Great? But it makes a lot of sense to me. So I can see how their thought process go and what their brain patterns are. So I think that's interesting more than anything. And I encourage them to continue to write, continue to do your thing, figure it out. And over time, kids start figuring their own stuff out. And that's what's, again, through homeschooling, that's what we've learned a lot. It's just let them make their mistakes, let them fill it all out, let them goof off. They're kids. There's a great book called 12 Rules of Life by Jordan Peterson. I'm not sure if you've read that book. And they talk about letting kids just be kids. Let them at age 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, even me now, I'm still a big kid. Let kids just be kids. Let them make mistakes. Let them fall over. Let them break stuff and not get upset. Being a parent nowadays is so difficult. It's you get challenged by so many outside sources, whether, the Joneses down the street, my kid's doing this, my kid's in 25 different sports, they're the best, and I'm going to all these things, and I'm traveling all over to all these. And so you hear all these outside sources, and being a parent is already tough enough. The biggest thing, and I'm kind of going off that tangent, which I typically do, but the biggest thing for me and what I've learned is that if you're a good person, your kids are going to be good kids. If you push them, sometimes you push them to boundaries that you would have never pushed yourself, and maybe you haven't even gone to that level. And we live our lives a lot of times through our children, and we push them. You've seen it a million times. You have kids that think parents think they're going to go to the, World Cup, or they're going to be professional baseball players, and they're not anywhere close. But they pressure them and push them so hard, and that's a lot of pushback. But that book I mentioned just really talked about just letting kids just be kids. Let them fall and scrape their knee. Let them make mistakes. If they don't want to play football, don't make them play football. If they don't want to play a piano, don't let them play the piano. Let kids do what they want to do, and I think that goes a long way. And it goes back to is that positivity part of what I always talk about is if you have positive reinforcement and you're a positive parent and you just encourage, and don't put up with the kids that are, if they're acting up, don't put up with that. Don't let your kids. I think one of the chapters in this book is if you see a child doing something that you don't like to do, don't let them do it. It's pretty self-explanatory. Pretty easy. But he breaks it down psychologically about letting your kids be their good kids and learn from right and wrong. You see them doing something wrong, you got to call them out. Rip the Band-Aid off again. So again, that was a long tangent, a long answer for what you were saying there, but. Yeah, man, it's something I'm obviously passionate about. I love, just like you, I love being a parent, and I love the challenge of it more than anything. It's a psychological battle every day, so I love it.
Absolutely, man, and please don't apologize for going long. I love rants. I've learned the word on the live interviews, and I've noticed that the more rants that somebody has, or just lets go, the more golden nuggets come out.
Totally.
So I appreciate that, man. It's challenging being a father. I love it, and what you're saying, man. I just that's why I so much enjoy these live interviews, just because I myself just get so much out of it, and I just keep writing down things and just keep trying and working on it and just be better than I was yesterday. And hey, sorry for the interruption. I know you're really enjoying the show. Just want to make sure if you're liking this information, please subscribe and press the like button. And also go visit becomeafearlessfather.com. You get the opportunity to share your biggest challenge at the moment as a father, and it gives me the opportunity to try and help you overcome this. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the show. Finding those failures, because that's what we're going to do as fathers, right? We're just going to fail as well.
Let me jump in real quick too. This thing popped in my head too about being a parent. I mentioned this, the video gaming system too, and watching the movies and watching the TVs. I think that does several different things. And again, preface this. This is the way we do it, not the way everybody else should do it. But it takes away time from being a parent. If you put your kid in front of a TV for 6 hours a day, or they're in front of video game systems, you don't have a chance to be a parent. Go for a walk. Go outside and kick the ball around. Throw the ball around. Go on a nature walk. Do something outside and allow yourself to be a parent. If you don't, the video game system and the TVs and the movies has a double-edged sword. It cuts the kids and it cuts you as a parent, because you don't have a chance to practice being a parent as well. And again, if we look back 30 years ago, that's all we did. Parents would come outside and my dad would always be the all-time pitcher. But it was an opportunity that we play with all the neighborhood kids. We play baseball. Mm-hmm. But without being out there and involved with the children's lives, not just dragging them from event to event, or sticking them in front of a TV, or sticking an iPad in front of them, or a gaming system, or whatever the case is, you don't have that opportunity for that relationship to grow as well. The respect isn't there as strong as it probably should be. So when you have your child watching TV and video games all day long, and then you try and correct your child when it's time for them to do their homework, and their day is so compacted by these things that they have to play the games, they have to watch this movie, then they have to do homework, then they have to go to bed. You don't have no time for a growth in the relationship. So when you tell your child something, you haven't developed that strong enough, sometimes there's that pullback. They don't understand why you're telling them. And there's not that teaching moment when you're out in public, right, at a park, and you see your child do something, you pull them aside in a different environment and say, hey, I noticed you were doing this. Why don't you let the other kid play in the swing? Little stuff like that. But that's the fear I have nowadays with technology and relationships eroding away. That it's very impactful. So I just wanted to throw that in there because it just popped in my head, but I think it's very important.
Absolutely, man. I really appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, we actually stopped turning on the TV during the week. And I've seen a huge change where before they were saying like, hey, I'm bored. Now it's they want to stay longer in the playground. And after that, they just immediately go play themselves. As I mentioned, they're 5 and 3, so they don't have any homework or nothing yet. So that just lights up my world because, and sometimes even because we have my mother-in-law now at the moment here in the house as well, if she turns on the TV, they don't even sit. And sometimes the kids just sit and they look and they're looking at the news. Like, they don't want to watch the news. But
Absolutely.
It's horrible, man. And my kids now, they just, hey, it's your grandma's time, he needs her TV. So they just go play anyway in the living room. And that's I enjoy that, absolutely. So I appreciate you sharing that because it is very important. And we see it more and more. I don't know if that's in the States, but here in the restaurants, you go out with your family, with your kids, and both kids just have a tablet or a mobile phone in front of their face, so they're quiet watching something. It's like, really?
Yeah, and it's the same thing we just mentioned, and having conversation at the dinner table. That's the road of the way because those phones are right there in front of you, and it's tough to develop those relationships, making that much stronger. So, you see all those tips for people when older children that come with the phones, they shut them all off and put them in a basket in the middle of the tables. No one can touch it until after you're completely done and after everyone's done eating. So you've seen those little tips like that I think are super important. And it'll be interesting, man. With your kids being young and my kids being young and how this develops into it, it'll be interesting to see. 20 years from now, what does this look like? I don't know. It's just trusting your gut, and it goes back to being just a good person. Your kids will be fine.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, but I must say, because that's the most important thing, right? That your kids are enjoying their life and they're happy. And I must say, I see them smiling more when they're playing in the playground than they're watching TV. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
They're more, and they just shine more than most kids that I see, especially in their school. Sometimes I watch parents walking and you see their kids and they're just head down, and then you look in front or behind and then you see the father walking exactly the same. It's like, wow,
Oh yeah.
no
Yeah,
one.
absolutely.
That's
Yeah,
that's
totally.
sad. So, dude, man, I got tons of questions, but I want to keep going we're having a
Sure.
conversation. You just mentioned, man, your 12-year-old is setting up his own business. I find that fascinating. And now there's something going off in my head on one side saying, I want that too, right? But you mentioned just now, it's not about what I want, it's about what they want. So I'm just wondering, how did this come about and how did your kid decide, like, okay, yeah, I want to do this? Have you been stimulating this, or is it just your kids looking at you, seeing what you're doing, and that's the inspiration? Or
Well, it's a great question. It all started with my 12-year-old long time ago. I've always told him from day one that he's the big brother. He's the leader of the family. He has to set the example for his brother and his sister. And if he would act up, I would pull him aside and said, his name was Vincent. I'd say, Vincent, what you're just doing, did you notice your brother and your sister staring right at you while you were doing it? Yes, I did, Dad. What do you think's going through their head? Are you setting a good example and being a leader? And again, it's these adult conversations that I think need to have with kids instead of coddling them. I think it's instilling leadership qualities with him. So from day one, he is just an absolute leader, 100%. And he is, it's great. About 3 years ago, I got super mad at his sister for doing something, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was. But I was like steaming mad at her for something, and I think it was either something broke or something like that. And he came up to me right away and just tearing, bawling, Dad, it was me, it wasn't her. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. But that's that leadership role. So as soon as he says that, my entire defenses come down. I still get mad at him. I tell her I apologize, and I tell her to go to her room while I calm down and, get my wits about me, and I send him to his room. I go back to her and I apologize to her. I said, I apologize. And then I mentioned her brother. And I say, I really appreciate your brother stepping up. And that's why your brother is such a good big brother. And I know you love him very much. I go right back to it. Then I go back to him. Son, I can't tell you how proud I am of you for stepping up. I said, it brings tears to my eye. And it shows me how big of a leader you are and how much you love your sister. And when you have these big boy conversations with them, it instills lifelong lessons. And not only that, it strengthens the love of the brother and sister relationship that much more for both of them. That's a huge opportunity that if I didn't go down that road, that would have been an opportunity missed, that you don't get those opportunities a lot. So I've done that with my oldest boy since day one, and he's instilled that with all his brother and sister. For on the business side of it, it's just really him. We've encouraged him to do whatever he wants. He's very, very, very creative, and that's not me. I can't build a sandwich. He could build anything, and he eyeballs everything, which is crazy. But he just has this love for the environment, a love for seeds, and he grows all of his own plants and harvests his own seeds. And he decided, hey, Dad, I want to start selling these seeds because he goes through his own seed catalogs and he'll buy them online and things like that. And he said, I'm going to develop my own. So his website will be launched here hopefully in the next 2 weeks. But he's doing it all by himself. It goes back to that technology part of it. The technology has to be part of it a little bit. But it's, okay, here, what are you going to do when you get online? Well, I just need to research this and this and this. Okay, well, you get so much time, and we sit there with him right in the room. Not that he would do anything, because it's just not him. But it's important. You got to have that technology at some point. But he is the most driven kid I've ever met. And I think it's a combination of the homeschooling. It's allowing him to decide what he wants to do on a day-to-day basis, what kind of time he wants to dedicate to his homeschool work or to his business. If he wakes up one day and says, Dad, I want to go out and build a table, go out and build a table, man. We'll do your lessons tomorrow. Because allowing him to experience that and just be able to make a decision and stick to it and then go out and create something, it's so important. And, it's funny, like he about 3 months ago, I went in my son's room. I said, my daughter was in there, and I said, hey, what are you doing? Her name's Mia. I said, Mia, what are you doing? She said, oh, Dad, Vincent just hired me, and he's going to pay me with experience. I looked at him, and I could just see this grin ear to ear. He was so proud that he hired his sister and that he negotiated no pay, because he's a big money guy. So those two combination things, but his sister was so proud of him. I mentioned this yesterday to a friend of mine. I said to my youngest one, his name's Anthony, he's 7. This has been about 5 months ago. I said, Anthony, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, we always ask our kids that. What do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, I want to be just like Vincent. And when you hear that, it didn't even cross my mind that he didn't want to be like me, which I'm totally cool with, but he wants to be like his big brother. And that right there, when you hear that from your youngest child, you know you're doing something right with your oldest boy because of that leadership, the caringness, the relationship they have. It's just, it's pretty powerful to watch. But I guess going back to it, I mean, from day literally 1 when he was born, I was talking in his ear. You're the leader of the family. You're going to be taking care of the family. And I do the same thing with his sister. You know, I talk to his sister and say, Mia, you know, you have to take care of your 2 brothers. You have to, because you know, they're going to rely on you. You're a girl right in the middle. They're going to need you, and you're a leader. I do the same thing with her, and the same thing with my youngest boy. You know, hey, you got a lot of responsibility. You got to hold up to your brother and your sister and what they're doing. You got to help them out when they're down. And sometimes you got to step up, being the youngest one. So it's just constant leadership stuff that I talk with my kids literally over and over and over. Little things. We listen to podcasts in my car constantly. We don't listen to the radio in the car every once in a while, but mostly it's a podcast and different educational things that we listen to. So that in itself is powerful too. Reading to the kids every single night. That we never skip a day. And it's usually a long story, 45 minutes. And it's long, real long, and a different about life. About a lot of times right now we're into Little House on the Prairie, Laura Ingalls, with a whole book system with that, and it's about living in, you know, 100 years ago and living off the land and respecting nature and things like that. So that's what we're going through right now. But yeah, I mean, again, that's all it probably sounds foreign to a lot of people, but what I find out a lot of times is I wish we could do that with our children. And biggest thing is you can. It's just you got to just, you know, rip the Band-Aid off and just do it. And sometimes that's the hardest thing for parents to understand. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. I just got tons of more questions.
Yeah. Fire away, man. I love it.
Man, because I can understand that, you know, you want your kids to grow up as leaders, and that you are, you know, you have certain values and you have clearly for you, what does it mean to be a leader? However, I can also understand that a lot of fathers don't, right? They didn't have that on their parents, and they don't have the drive right now, if they even didn't have it, to study that. I had a feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you read a lot and you listen a lot to podcasts to develop your own mind and leadership skills so you can be that example. Am I right there? Or
there's no question about it. I you know, and you know, my dad, my mom and dad have been divorced 35 years, and really started with my dad. My dad was always there when he could. He set a great example, which always helped. But, you know, it's the old Jim Rohn saying that if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And I think developing yourself daily is super, super important. And it goes back to, if your kids see you read and your kids see you listen to podcasts, they're going to do that as well. But I'm just, and this wasn't like this forever. I was, you know, growing up, I was not the greatest kid in the world. You know, I didn't graduate from college. I dropped out of college. I was horrible. I was bad in high school, and I got in some trouble back in the day. But you know, I don't know what clicked. I just started really getting into personal development. Like the first book I ever read, really, literally ever read, was The Secret, and that kind of opened up doors. And I know, you know, The Secret's a great book, but you know, you have to take The Secret and add action to it. And that really opened the door for me, and I just really got into self-education. And from then I've read, I can't tell you how many books I've read, but that's super important. Super important. It's not something that just happens overnight. The other thing that I've kind of one of the biggest lessons I've learned is not the fear to fail, and understand that I'm not perfect. But I don't judge. Literally, I try not to judge anybody, and that goes with 2 of my kids as well. If they want to do something that I don't want to do, or if they have this idea that I don't agree with at all, I just tell them my thoughts and feelings, and I tell them to go do it. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I don't know if I have all the right answers, and I'm not perfect. And I tell my kids that I'm not perfect, son. I don't know. I make mistakes. And I think that vulnerability part is huge too for kids. And, you know, sometimes as parents, we need to feel like we're invincible and we make no mistakes. I think that's the wrong way to do it. I think we need to encourage our kids that we're not perfect and we do make mistakes. And that grows us as human beings, and our kids respect us more when they understand that, you know what, hey, my dad's not perfect, but man, he never gives up. He's always there for me. He loves me unconditionally. If I have questions, I can go to him, but he's far from perfect. That's important too, because, you know, again, man, you see those pictures of, I'm the perfect parent, I'm the greatest, I go to all my kids' games. Great if you do, it's awesome, but being that perfect parent it's your own definition. And if you can be the best that you possibly can and be vulnerable with your kids, that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned, is just vulnerability with my kids. And understand, they know, believe me, they know I'm far from perfect and I make big mistakes. And my kids will tell me about it. Dad, you told me you were going to do this last week and you didn't do it. What do you think about that?
Oh,
Right. Yeah, you're right. I apologize. You're exactly right. Let's go do it right now. You know, so but they have the freedom, and it's all respect. It's not like, you know, they're not calling me out. Well, in a sense they are, but they're not being rude or disrespectful. They're just they're holding me accountable, and I appreciate that. I hold them accountable, and that's what makes it really, really work well, is the relationship that we have with kids.
Exactly. Wow, I like that. Yeah, you kind of give them the freedom to speak their mind, right?
100%.
And that's that's really powerful. That's one of the things that I started to realize more, is because I'm assuming you have that as well. You also have that little voice in your head. My son, we went shopping. He wanted socks like his brother for walking the house. It's a little chilly, so they don't want to walk with shoes, but they have these little socks with the anti,
Yeah, sure.
And he picked like the most girly, let me say that right. In my opinion, most girly sock, like pink and little flowers on it and stuff like that. And he was really proud of it. I had to swallow, man. Because there's such a big voice saying, you know, that's girly and you shouldn't do that. But at the same time, I'm like, man, I've learned so much. I've grown so much. Shut that voice up and just let your kid do what he feels like, man. It's all good.
Absolutely. Let your kids be their individual selves. If they think pink is awesome, hey, I do too. Whatever you think is cool, I'm in, 100%. And that's that vulnerability too. And then that's understanding that, you know, there's out there that, oh, you can't buy that's for girls. No, I mean, let's hang our ego on the door for just a minute. Let's swallow that pride just a little bit and let our kids be our kids. That's what's stupid. So that's cool that you did that.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. It's hard sometimes, man. Sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about, you spoke a little about it in the beginning, but the Positive Side podcast, what's its origin? How did that came about? And more importantly, what's the impact that you're trying to make within people? And I think, no, let me rephrase that. Sorry. Sometimes it goes questions in my head and I get more questions. There are so many fathers out there that just do a 9 to 5 and that's perfect. You know, all power to them. However, there's so many out there as well that have a 9 to 5, but at the same time, they're thinking like, ooh, I want this dadpreneur life, right? But they don't know how.
Totally.
What would be your advice on how to find like what is for you the Positive Side podcast?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, there's several different ways we can go with that. And I think for me, with my job, and a little bit more about my history of my job, I've been in the automotive industry for a long, long time. And I was burnt out. And I had enough of it. I had to get out of it. I had to hit the reset button. And I wanted to come up with a podcast called The Positive Side of the Car Business. And then I hire a coach. And I think everyone out there should hire a coach. At some point in your life, you need to you understand that you don't have all the answers, and it's important to have an accountability coach, life coach, business coach, whatever the case is. I've hired multiple coaches over the last few years to pick my game up to the next level, because again, you don't have all the answers, and hiring someone else and actually paying for it makes it real. It's one of those things that we can talk a good game and do all the stuff and say, hey, I got these ideas, but we don't actually ever take the step, take the leap. It doesn't make it real until you start paying for it. When you start paying for it and going down a certain road, then you start getting into, okay, this is getting real. So that's one of the biggest things I'd pull away is hire somebody to help you. The second thing is if you're miserable at what you're doing, just quit. I know it's brutal. It's brutally honest, but if you hate your job, what kind of example, we'll tie this back into the kids, what kind of example are you setting for your kids? So probably subconsciously with my kid starting his own business, it's probably a lot from what I've done. As I've quit multiple jobs in the last 3 years, I've quit, I don't know how many jobs, a lot of jobs, because I just didn't like it. And life is so short and so important. To work at a place that you despise, you are not only eating your way at your soul, but you're also setting an example for your children to say that it's okay to be miserable. So when I've quit my job and I've traveled all across this country here, and I've been a lot of different places, I've done all my podcasts, I've interviewed some amazing people, and I think it sets that example for my kids of saying, hey, we're just going to try stuff out. We're going to take a risk. We're going to go for it. We're going to continue to work on it. The other unique thing about my podcast is I'm brutally honest with my podcast. I don't hold anything back. I tell exactly what I'm going through. I tell when I quit my job, why I quit my job. I tell my vulnerabilities, what I'm scared about. When you quit a job and you've got no money coming in, what is that like? What is it like working at a job that you can't stand? How do you quit a job like that? How do you find another job? And that's one thing that makes that podcast very unique, is that it is 100% vulnerable. It's real. I talk about my mistakes. I talk about financial stuff. But I also talk at the end of the day, all those are all opportunities. I look at the positive side of each one of those. When I quit a job, another opportunity always comes up. It always has. It always will. When I move and things don't work out, I talk about the opportunity for growth. What did I learn from this past position? Now, as I go down this Positive Side podcast world, my hope and goal is to, again, maybe completely be out of the car business. But right now, it's just not realistic. And that's okay. I think when people say, well, I've got to quit my job right now and go for it, I get it. Sometimes it's good to quit a job and go get a part-time job that you actually enjoy doing, and then work on your life goals. Quitting the job, and I made a mistake. I quit my job cold turkey and had no income coming in for a while. I had some money saved up, thankfully, but looking back, I probably should have had some kind of a part-time job. I could have been a bartender, or I could have worked at a grocery store or something like that, just to help. But, again, those are some of the experiences I share with that. And I think the most important thing is just really, you just got to be happy. And I know it sounds so cliche. Happiness is so important. It's one of the most important things in this world. You never, and again, this sounds cliche. You don't know when your last day is going to be. I've had some friends pass away in the last month, and you just don't know. So if that's the answer, you don't know when your last day is, what are you doing today that's different from yesterday? What are you going to do for your goals? What are you going to, are you going to take that trip? Are you going to go to an art museum? Are you going to go to the beach? Are you going to, spend time with that loved one that you haven't seen in a while? Are you going to pick up the phone and call somebody? It's all these little things that run through my head 24 hours a day. Is what can I do different today than I did yesterday? It doesn't have to be gigantic, but there's got to be something else that's inspiring me or inspiring someone else. It's the other thing that Jim Rohn said. If you haven't read any Jim Rohn books, they're awesome. But I might have been Zig Ziglar that said this, but the more people you help achieve their goals, the quicker you're going to achieve yours. And that's one of the things I do with the podcast is just really, I want everybody else to achieve their goals. And I want them to quit their job, and I want them to eventually, and I want them to find the right job. I want them to be happy, or whether it be independently or with a corporation, whatever. There's no right or wrong. But just be happy and understand that, there's another good saying, but I'm just throwing all kinds of cliches out there to you. But another good saying that says you're either, going through a crisis, coming out of a crisis, or getting ready to go into a crisis. So that's reality, and that's really, if you probably almost put yourself in that situation where you are at in that, we need to make sure that every single day is better than the next, so we can continue to make the highs longer and the lows shorter. And because we're going to go through them, right? I mean, there's no doubt about that. But we got to keep that mental side of that and keep that positivity and keep, as I mentioned in my Positive Side podcast, is me going through it, man. And I'm just keeping it real. I'm just trying to tell everybody else that you're struggling. Hey, man, I know what you're going through. I've been there. But we got to keep fighting. We got to keep going. We got to take the next step. We got to be more positive. We can't take days off. If you do take a day off, you can't take 2 days off. You got to get back on that horse. That's one thing I see with a lot of people is that it's what separates the best from the rest is that, we all go through tough times, but the best don't go through the tough times for a long time. When you see people that are depressed or struggling for a year, Successful people struggle for a month or a week or even a few days. And then we get out of that funk. You take action, take that next step. Figure, okay, what am I going to do? Yesterday's over. What am I going to do today? So that's the whole point of the podcast is getting motivated and getting pumped up and understanding that, hey, we do struggle, but man, there's so much good in this world, so much happiness to have. So, yeah, man, that's a little bit about the podcast. So yeah, check it out. It's on, it's all over iTunes, and quick little plug. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, it's everywhere, and you can check out, the Positive Side Podcast on all social media and JeremyTodd.com. I'm all over there too.
Awesome, man. That sounds really great, and I love talking to dadpreneurs that put impact above making money, right? I'm sorry, people.
Here, I got something else for you while you're getting that out of your system. Another thing you can do as a dad, has kind of off topic a little bit, but I think one of the most important things you can do is help underprivileged kids and get involved with big brothers, big sisters. Sponsor one kid. You don't need to sponsor the world. But I think just making that impact. There are so many children out there, boys and girls, that just don't have that. They may have good parents, but some of these kids want more. They want accountability. And again, it goes back to this whole society of techie people that don't know really how to talk to people, and they don't know how to have those harder conversations. And I think when you get involved with, I'm working with a young man here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, that I'm just so proud of, and he's made huge steps. He always comes through, and I send him audiobooks, and I send him books, and I call him once a month. It's nothing huge, but these little impacts that we can all make together as being a father figure. This is obviously a father podcast, but man, it's just so many kids out there just don't have that. So that's one easy way. And if you don't have any kids, boy, I mean, that's even more reason to kind of step up and sponsor a kid that doesn't have a father, because man, they need them so bad. It's the stability, it's the mentor, it's the who am I going to look up to? All of that stuff is so important, and it's so rewarding at the same time. So if you haven't done that, I would encourage everyone to do that as fast as you can.
I like that. I appreciate you covering me as well.
Yeah, you bet.
Anyway, so yeah, that's really powerful, and you're absolutely right. Everybody should try and make that impact in at least somebody's life, especially the kids. It's so important, and that's what we're trying to keep doing, right? So, you just mentioned, like, we let our kids do what they want to do. I'm kind of big on morning routine and more on, like, okay, this is a set time that we wake up. We don't have the luxury that we can start school whenever we want. We have a set time.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, is there like a system that you have set up for how you guys wake up, what you guys do, in regards to what you mentioned before, making that daily progress and making sure that, today is just going to be a bit more special, a bit better than it was yesterday?
My days are pretty much unstructured, kind of structured, I guess. When the days are waking up in my household, it's very, very quiet. It's peaceful in the morning. We don't set alarm clocks. Kids wake up at the exact same time every day. That's just what they do. Their mental alarm clock is set. They go to bed pretty much at the same time, but they wake up and they make their own breakfast. We don't encourage them, whatever they want to make, they make it. And typically they make breakfast for everybody. Like if my daughter comes to me and say, "Dad, would you like an omelet? Would you like whatever?" Sure, yeah, absolutely, thank you. And then she'll bring me my food. Or if my youngest one, he knows how to make cereal really, really well. So he'll get his cereal every single morning. But typically what happens is, it's by the time I wake up, if I wake up earlier or later, a lot of times I go to the gym in the morning, I come back and they're just in their room quietly playing. And that's again, peaceful. When you have a structured morning, and I know with school systems you have to have structured morning, I get it. But I'm just saying from what we experience, our mornings are so peaceful. They are just quiet. It's a great way to start the day. You don't wake up with this anxious tension about having to be somewhere and go and go and go. That's just not us. That's why we're big homeschool advocates, is because that I think that's for children's brains development. It's important to be calm and quiet in the morning. But if you're on a school system, if you're on a certain time, I think you can tie that in there as well. Is maybe go to bed earlier, wake up earlier. Um, we try and encourage our kids to sleep in as much as long as they can. They're busting up before they get up, but I mean, the only way to fix that, and you do it with myself, is if I want to wake up early, I go to bed earlier. Um, there's ways to doing it, but it's just, do we take the easy way out, or do we take, do we just, continue to fight this battle of every single morning? We're rushing around and everybody's waking up late, and we're trying to jam food down their throats, and they're eating food on the way to school because we didn't have enough time in the morning. And we're like, we got to get up early, but we don't change the real problem of going to bed earlier. You need to go to bed earlier. If you go to bed earlier, you wake up earlier. You're in a better mood. Things are done. What's your nightly routine? Are you preparing yourself for the next morning? Or is the lunch made the night before? Are your clothes ready? Is your room clean? Little things like this that are just, and maybe I take a lot of things for granted because we've done it for so long. But it's just having this structured life that the kids wake up at the exact same time because we go to bed early. Our kids aren't up till 9 o'clock at night ever. They go to bed at 7:30, at 8 o'clock at the latest. But that gives them a good 10 hours of sleep every single night, and they wake up calm, cool. I mean, again, we don't have to rush off to school too, which makes it nice. But they come out, they make breakfast, and then let's talk about what do you guys want to do today. Well, they've got certain chores they have to do. They have to go and obviously pick up their room, make their bed. We got chickens, so we go out and feed the chickens, feed the cat, do whatever. And then, they get started on their own projects, and then we get into school. So my oldest boy will start working on his business. My daughter will start helping out with that. My youngest one will just be doing whatever the heck he wants. He'll be outside kicking the ball around. But it's a very unstructured, unschooling life. And, homeschooling in the United States is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, which I think it should. The schooling system here, and I'm not sure about Europe, but was developed over 100 years ago. And things have changed. I think they've changed a lot, not only in societal changes, but children have changed. It's just different. So we're trying to find the right way to raise our children just a little bit differently, see what happens. And yeah, we believe it's going to work out great. But yeah, I guess if you go back to the whole structure thing, is our kids are structured, but it's very loose. But it all starts with sleep. And that's the biggest thing, sleep. Kids should have at least 10 hours of sleep every night, at least. So important. Allows their brains to develop, bodies to heal, sickness to get over. Super important. So that would be what I'd tell you. In the mornings, don't worry about the mornings, worry about the nights. What do they look like? That's where you start.
Yeah, that's great advice. I appreciate you sharing that. I started laughing. I apologize sometimes because I get thoughts in my head, and I reminded me of this morning. By the time that I leave school, because the teachers are there, I still see parents running.
Sure. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
My God, that must be, but not just once. If it happens once, I'll be like, okay. Just every single day, it's the same, with the same anxiety expression on their faces. I'm like, when does it click in your head to be like, okay, it's time for me to make some changes? And I can appreciate, I mean, I know there's parents out there that got 5 kids and all that kind of stuff. I can appreciate that, but still, just, look for your challenges and try to overcome something to make you
figure it out. Yeah, figure it out. I mean, the old doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Definition of insanity is insane. How are you going to keep doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, talking about that, right? Because you mentioned a lot, self-development, stuff like that. You just mentioned a couple of books already. But if there's, because there's fathers out there listening and they're just in that stage of like, okay, I don't know where to start. What would be like, let's say 1, 2, maybe 3 books that you would recommend, saying like, hey, look, if you are in that place, that's not the place that you want to be and you're struggling to get out, what would be 2 or 3 books that you would advise somebody to start off with that could really help?
Yeah, that's a great question. My favorite book of all time is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And The Alchemist talks about really just believing and understanding that the universe is going to take care of things. But you have to have the faith and the belief in yourself. You have to have the belief that things are going to be okay. That book right there made a huge impact on my life and really everything. It allowed me to kind of put away all the fear and the anxiety and the problems in my life, and really just focus on, hey, if I continue to go on this path and have faith that it's going to work, whether it be God, whether it be the universe, but things are going to be okay. Things are going to take care of themselves. That book right there is by far the most impactful book that I've ever read in my entire life. I've also read, a lot of business books have been great for me, but I've read a lot of other books that are just talk about life and developing as a human being. I think those are super important. I read it's Two Days of Maury. It was a good book I started reading years and years ago. That was a book about a gentleman dying from Lou Gehrig's disease and how that went through his whole body, but talked about life and experiences. That was by Mitch Albom. I've read all Mitch Albom's books. He's a sports commentator here in Detroit. But he's written some great books. So all of John Maxwell books are just amazing. 21 Laws of Leadership, or I think that's the one. That was one of the first books I read as well. A very easy read. I love that book. And there's so many books I've read. Even recently, I've read Jen Sincere's book, You're a Badass, is a great book about, just owning stuff and understanding you are a badass and you can handle things. That was a great book that I've read. As I mentioned, I'm reading Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules of Life. That's a great book. I just finished David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. That book there is off the ringer. That book right there, that's a gut check book. It talks about, all the excuses that you've had in your life and you use them every single day for the reasons why you haven't achieved your goals, and you continue to use them instead of just getting up and doing it. That's a great book. I would almost tell everybody to get that book, David Goggins' book. Again, Can't Hurt Me. I listened to an audiobook, and it was, I think, 12 hours long. It was a really long book, but man, it made a huge impact in my life. So those are a few books that I would definitely read. And these things that the biggest thing for me is I'm a podcast junkie too. I just love podcasts, and I've learned so much from podcasts. Some of the podcasts I listen to are my favorite podcast, hands down, is Joe Rogan's podcast. It's tough to listen to with children in the car. He drops a lot of F-bombs. They talk about a lot of adult situations, but his podcast is one of the most impactful podcasts I've ever heard because of the different guests he has on there. I listen to the Model Health Show with Sean Stevenson's a great podcast. Talks about just health, obviously, eat and diet, and how important diet is in not only your life, but your children's lives. And what I love about his podcast, he gets real into the weeds about why you eat certain foods at certain times. We also are big organic things. Our kids haven't had fast food in 7 years, or at least my two youngest ones have never had fast food, and that plays a part in my kids' mental development. I think I'm big on that. So that's Sean Stevens' podcast is awesome for that. Tim Ferriss has got a great podcast. That's an awesome one. And I listen to a great history podcast. I know I'm all over the map with this podcast, but Dan Carlin's podcast, Hardcore History, is the bomb. And I love it. It's just, it's all these different well-rounded things. So when I have conversations with my kids about history or, whatever right, the one in, one I'm reading right now or listening, I just got done, was Pearl Harbor. I talked about Japanese and how they planned the whole attack, and it's just fascinating. So things like that I try and learn, because again, I wasn't the greatest student in the world. So I'm kind of trying to learn as much as I possibly can. I went to an art museum a few weeks ago by myself, and that was hugely impactful for me. Mm-hmm. It's something I never thought I'd ever do before, when I thought I was cool, but I understand I'm not cool anymore. So now I just want to learn and find out about this world. There's so much. So education's huge for us. It's important. It sets that example. Podcasting is, Gary Vee. Boy, Gary Vee is awesome too. I forgot about my boy Gary Vee. Gary Vaynerchuk, he's awesome. He cusses a lot, so you can't have kids in the car again. But man, that dude brings it. I love it. I love it. So that's my day, man. I wake up. I listen to podcasts first thing in the morning. Listen to them while I'm in the shower, in the bathroom. I put them in my car. I put them in my headphones. I go to the grocery store and listen to podcasts, listen to my audiobooks. So I'm constantly learning. And I love that part of it. So, and then I share it with my kids. That's the other cool thing about it. I share all the stuff I'm learning with them. And they, sometimes they find it interesting. Sometimes they can care less. Like my oldest boy, I'll have him in the car and I'll say, what do you want to listen to, music or a podcast? And I'll listen to a podcast. We listen to the history ones, or listen to every once in a while, let him listen to Joe Rogan podcast if he's got someone interesting on there, and just tell him he's gonna cuss a lot. He knows, but yeah, that's okay. And he has big boy conversations. They talk about smoking marijuana. They talk about drinking, or they talk about psychological defects. I mean, they talk about all kinds of stuff. But I just tell my oldest boy, "Hey, this is what you're gonna hear," and he understands. He gets it. And he's, at 12 for my 12-year-old, he can listen to anything. I'm not concerned about what he's gonna think. He's got this pretty strong-willed, smart kid. But that's what I do, man. I just constantly learning, constantly listening, and giving back to my kids. And all those books that I've read, super important. Every book is super important. They've all made huge impacts on my life, and I would encourage everybody to continue to read. Not only reading a book with your hands, but audiobook and then podcasting. So that's my day, all day, every day. It wears people out. That's all I do.
Nice, I like that. I appreciate that, man. I asked for 2 books, 3 books, and I got like 7 books and 5 podcasts.
Yeah,
nice. I appreciate that. Way to over deliver.
Yeah.
So, when you say like, yeah, you should read books and do audiobooks, I appreciate you saying that, because that was actually one of my questions. Because I had one time somebody on, he was saying like, yeah, you should read this book and this book and this book, and find out that it was all audiobooks. Like, okay.
Yeah.
So, do you have like books that you do and that you have and the audiobook and the actual physical book? And you
No, that's a good question. I don't have that. No, and this is kind of goes back to we haven't talked about this yet, but I'm a minimalist as well, so I don't have a lot of things. So whenever I get books, I read them, and I might keep them for maybe a couple months, and then I give them away. I always give my books away. I don't have a stack of books anywhere at my office. I don't have boxes of books anywhere. I give them away. So I think giving books away as well is super important too. I think as you read them, you come across somebody. Hey, I got this book at home. I'm going to give to you. Giving these books away is so impactful. It's so important. So I don't have a lot of books here anymore. I've given most of them away. And audiobooks are nice. I wish I could give an audiobook away, but you can. I've sent like my kid, that young man I'm sponsoring, I sent him an iTunes card for David Goggins' book. He bought David Goggins' book. It was so impactful for me. So I give those away. But if I buy a book and I'm going to read it, I'm going to give it away to somebody. That's my whole intention of buying the book, not to keep it for myself, because I heard this a long time ago. That chances of you are actually going back and rereading the book are slim. You might, but it's slim. But a lot of times you say, well, I'm going to use it for reference. Well, when was the last time you actually used that book for reference? It was probably once, if not ever. So if that's the case, why keep it around? Why hold on to it? Allow someone else to learn from it, and then make more impact with someone else's hands than keeping it collecting dust on your shelf. So that goes along with the whole minimalist lifestyle, getting rid of everything, and it's been super impactful too. So that's the other thing too, kids. We don't hold on to anything. We make our kids give stuff away, give away their stuffed animals, give away their favorite whatever toy, and watch them make impacts on other kids' lives, and explain to them why you're giving that away. You don't need that anymore. We're giving that away to some other kid that needs it. Do you not want to help another kid out that doesn't have anything? Extremely important. Every year for Christmas, we give away money to a hospital. Not a lot of money, not a ton, but I always take my kids with me. We go to the hospital where the kids are having cancer, they're sick, and we all walk in there together, and we walk up to the people and make impact in people's lives about giving things back to them. And again, it's not a lot of money. I think last year we gave $700-800 away. I mean, it wasn't huge, but it's a considerable amount of money. The year before that, we had some, beginning that minimalist lifestyle. I had a bunch of autographed football jerseys. So I gave those away at a hospital. And the year before that, we gave restaurant coupons to kids in cancer ward for their families. So it's all those things that we do. Again, developing our children. It's not just one thing. It's multiple things, and setting that example, leading, and actually doing the things that you talk about. All these things I talk about, I've done them, and they're super important. The more I want to do, but you gotta set the example. It all starts with being a good father, a good parent, a good mother, a good brother, sister, whatever. It's super important that you show by action instead of just by talking about it. That's important.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. It's something I'm struggling with a little bit with my kids at the moment. They fight a lot, and especially the older one. Instead of talking, he tries to have his brother do something. He doesn't do it, and then he overpowers him because he's of course older, stronger, and
Sure.
bigger. And I'm trying to teach him at the moment, like, look, just try to keep talking because that overpowering thing is not going to do you any good, and not now, not in the future. Your little brother is going to do whatever he wants to do at the end anyway. So
Yeah, something you might want to do, try with them is, whatever your older son's doing, whatever game he's playing. So you know what? Hey, before they even start playing, before they even go down the road, almost have a conversation with them and say, you know what? Hey, I noticed you're really good at this game. You're really really good at whatever you're doing. Um, would you mind? Can you take some time and show your brother, some of the things that you've learned, and just show him how to do it? And then you go to your younger son before they start playing and say, hey, have you ever noticed how good your older son is at this game? Yeah. Would you want to? I mean, why don't we ask him and see if he'll help teach you? Would that be okay? Would you like that? Yeah, I would like that. And you've already set it up, so that way when they go in there together, your older boys, he'll feel more responsible for teaching him, and then he'll be proud. And then that'll start spilling over on other things. Then your younger son will start looking to him a little bit more to help him teach stuff. I can't tell you how much my younger son says that, hey, Vincent, can you show me how to do this? Hey, Vincent, can you help me with this? And Vincent's like, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to show you how to do it. And then he'll come to me and say, hey, look what Anthony did. Like, wow, it's awesome, man. Good job, both of you guys. So
mhm.
maybe that's an idea to try that with them.
Yeah, I like that. I'm definitely going to try that right away.
Worth
Uh,
a shot.
no, no, absolutely, and I can tell that the youngest one he picks up on the oldest one very quickly, right? Because if you go to the playground, he's already doing stuff that at his age his older brother wasn't doing yet. So and he teaches him that. The only problem that we have is that the youngest one plays with the friends of the oldest one and not with his own
Sure.
group. But hey,
No
well,
perfect
life would
science.
be fun if we don't have these kind of challenges, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool, man. I'm just going to check real quick because you gave so much stuff already, man. Yeah, I just have one last question.
Sure.
I really wanted to ask this to you because you have a fantastic podcast. You're really successful. Of course, you started with something, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm at right now, I'm starting, not a lot of following yet, etc. What has been your like biggest thing or biggest takeaway that you can give to guys like me that are just starting out? Like, okay, what's like the one thing, or what's like something that we should definitely do to make sure that we become at one point in life at a spot that you're at right now?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Several things. Number one is being consistent, just continually doing it. When people tell you, when you have 0 downloads and no one listening, no one watching this Facebook Live, don't be discouraged. Continue to do it. That's the biggest thing for me that I've learned is consistency. Joe Rogan mentions it in his podcast. He's got, I don't know, he gets 30 million downloads a month, which is just sick. But he's been doing his podcast for 8 years, and for the first 3 years, no one listened. He did him in his kitchen with his kids running around and screaming and yelling in the background. I still do them like that. I keep mine authentic and real, but the other thing is authenticity. It's showing vulnerability. People nowadays, again, in a fake world that we live in, when you go onto social media and everyone's life is absolutely perfect and trying to keep up with the Joneses, that's not real. That's not reality. So if you can share your troubles and experiences and ask for help, that's super important. I started the Positive Side Podcast Facebook page. That helped a lot. Um, getting 5-star reviews helps a lot. It allows, to get more traction in the podcast. That helps. But the biggest thing really is just understanding that it's not going to happen overnight. And that's sometimes that's hard to take because you'll see people come out of the gates and just take off, and then you compare yourself. Well, man, what I should be doing that. I should be doing this, but you know what you should be doing, and being real with yourself, and being not trying to be someone else, not trying to be someone else's podcast. That's what's going to make it unique, and that's what's going to get people to really listen to your message and follow along with you. Because man, there's just so many fake ass people out there, and if you can be real, be consistent, and be patient. Really, those are the most important things you could possibly do. Get your website, get that done. Start a mailing list. That mailing list is kind of important. I don't have a lot of people in mind, but it's growing for sure. The other thing I like to do too, and this is just something on the business side for you, and I learned this from Gary Vee, is that when anyone ever makes a comment on your Facebook page or likes it or shares it or any social media post, 100% of the time you comment on it. 100% of the time. Always thank them, like do something. Because if they're taking the 10 seconds out of their day to take time to comment on something that you put out there, and then you don't respond by not saying thank you something, it's not only disrespectful and rude, but it's do you really care about the craft of what you're trying to do? So little things like that I've learned are super impactful and super important. That allows, with all the different algorithms with social media things, the more comments, more action you have, the better it is. So I would encourage you to do that.
Awesome. Wow. I appreciate you sharing that. That's great. So yeah, man, we've come to the end again. Thanks so much for being on. I really appreciate it. I got so many gold nuggets out there. So I really hope that people listen to what I said in the beginning, pen and paper. I do it every single time. I just keep forgetting to say to people, make sure you got it ready. Just before we get off, man, if people have more questions or if people want to follow you, what are the best ways to keep in contact?
Yeah, I appreciate that. You can go to several different things. You can go to jeremytodd.com. You can go to positivesidepodcast.com. Email me, jeremy@jeremytodd.com. Check out all the social media pages. Like those. That's on the Positive Side Podcast page on Facebook. I'm in there every single day, posting as much as I possibly can. I got a personal friend of mine that helps me out with some of the other stuff. My Instagram, Google Plus, Twitter. She's helping me out with that. She's amazing too. But the Positive Side Podcast Facebook page, I'm there all the time. I also have 30-minute free power calls. If you ever want to just kind of wonder, hey man, how do I get from here to there? Believe me, I give back free information all the time. So feel free to shoot me an email, and I will spend 30 minutes with you and just kind of give you a direction. And hey, if it makes sense for us to work together, we'll talk about that as well. But more importantly, it's just really giving back. And if I can make an impact on your day and really help you, and it's worth it for me. People ask me all the time, how much money are you making from your podcast? I said, it doesn't matter because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm giving back. The monetary amount, the lives that I'm changing from all over the world, it's pretty cool. I get emails I got one from, I told you before we started, from Spain a couple days ago. I've got one from South Korea, South Africa, Australia, all around the world. And when you understand that what you're doing is bigger than monetary, you're changing lives. That's what this whole life is about. Real quick too, this is the cool. I'm glad I said this before I go. What you're doing with your podcast is so important, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because this is the way I look at this podcast as well. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I hope to God I don't. But my kids will be able to go back and listen to the over 330 some podcast episodes that I've done in the past and say, what kind of person was my dad? At their young age, when these podcasts will be out there forever. That you will never be able to take this down off iTunes or all the other social media or the Stitcher and all the Google Play and all that other stuff. You'll never be able to take this stuff down. So what I do when I do my podcast, I act like I understand that the conversations I'm having, my kids are going to listen to it one day. My grandkids. This information that you do on a podcast and the information that you're giving out is not just impacting today, which it is. It's impacting 10 years from now. From your children, when they're older, and God, I hope you're here. But you never know if you're going to be here. But man, that for me makes it real. It's not fake. It's not. That's why I think it's authenticity is so important, because I don't want my kids to think I'm fake. It's as real as you can get. I want my kids to understand that my dad, well, he was all over the map. He did all kinds of crazy things, but he was authentic. He cared. He took care of people. He made impacts all around the world. That's what I'm leaving behind with the podcast. So when you talk about how many listeners and how you grow it, at the end of the day, I really don't care about growing my podcast. I want to impact lives. And I want my kids to be able to listen to this when I'm long gone, my grandkids. I watch a video like this. That's where you make the biggest impact for me personally. That's why I do it. Oh, there you go.
Nice. I appreciate you sharing this right out of the bat before we leave. Again, Jeremy, thanks so much for being on. Everybody that's watching the recording, you can check out the links of everything that Jeremy just mentioned, so you can check him out. And I highly recommend you following him and reaching out to him, because, if you've listened this long, then you must have gotten as many gold nuggets as I have. So at least show him some love as well. All right. So again, thanks, Jeremy. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Thanks, brother.
Are you still meeting up with your friends now that you're a father? Kids making you stress out. You got no time for yourself to work out, read, or relax. Can you still remember the time you were hanging out with your friends, feeling energetic, happy, and confident? Spending time together and talking about your life and your crazy dreams. You're feeling alone now, don't you? No one to share your challenges with, and you're just running around from one storm into the next. Well, it's time to change this now. Join me and the Brotherhood of Fearless Fathers to speak on a weekly basis with like-minded dads to crush your challenges, face your fears with determination, be held accountable, and regain control of your life. If you want to become the hero your family needs you to be, then go to becomeafearlessfather.com/brotherhood. I'm looking forward to seeing you on one of our next calls.